We have some good perspective this week on what's happening in Santa Fe. We're joined by two former state senators, Republican Diane Snyder and Democrat Eric Griego. Thank you both for being here. We're also welcoming back friend of the show, Tom Garrity of the Garrity Group Public Relations Company. We're always glad when Tom's here. All right, guys, the action's coming slow and deliberate in the Roundhouse. Lawmakers are planning for up to 12 days of work to hash out these redistricting decisions. And Tom, so far, what do you make of the approach?
Well, unfortunately, it's kind of what we thought might happen. By disclosure, on the topic of redistricting, I do have some clients in that particular space. My views are my own. With respect to what's happening is that I think what we saw was that the Citizen Redistricting Committee made their suggestions after two statewide hearings. They developed a set of maps for each of the different categories and submitted those maps. And I think the legislature just said, you know what? I think we could probably improve upon these, at which point it just really kind of took out the whole, people over place or rather over, politics is really kind of taking over. And that's really unfortunate because I think that, there definitely isn't any substantive public input on these different maps or even on this process. And I'm concerned that, unfortunately, partisan gerrymandering is going to become the rule of the day.
Let's go to our politicians on that one. Nice setup there, Mr. Tom. Eric Griego, former Senator Eric Griego, as Tom mentions, lawmakers are showing no fear in just turning away from what the CRC came up with. And we don't know exactly, they're arguing today as we record this, so we don't have the latest. But your sense of it so far, what you've seen, are the maps that Justice Chavez and others handed in just toast at this point?
Well, to be fair, I don't think they're starting from scratch. I think the recommended maps in most cases, as far as I've seen, have been the basis, the point of departure. And it's absolutely true that they've been tweaked, some more than others. So I wasn't crazy about all the maps, but certainly there.
All the maps that came out of the CRC were the
came out of CRC, yeah. And I mean, I supported this idea of having an independent body do it. I think they did a reasonable job of trying to take a lot of public input. I think the maps that came up with were, for the most part, pretty fair. And we don't know because they're literally, as you said, voting on them as we speak. So we don't know. And I was just talking to a former colleague before the show and like they don't know. There was amendments being offered and so on. So I went through this 10 years ago when I was in the Senate. I think Senator Snyder might have been there too. But there's changes up until the end. And just to be clear for the viewers, like these are, no matter how these things come out, they're going to be challenged legally. That's what happened last time. The courts will ultimately decide if they were fair, if there was anything untoward. But I know we're going to talk about this, but the biggest change I think that's really caused a bit of a dust up is this idea that we should have really redraw the congressional maps. And I think that's where everybody's focused. But there's a lot of other stuff going on, especially in the state Senate where Diane and I served. I think there's going to be some pretty big changes to the districts in the Senate side as well. In the state Senate, the House is less going on there, but I think the big change that perhaps folks are not happy with is that there will be 3 Democratic leaning districts as opposed to 2 Democratic and 1 Republican. And no matter where you come out on that, I think that's something that's happening all across the country given the stakes. I think if the Republicans were in control, you can be assured that they would be redrawing these districts the same way. So ultimately, I think the court's going to decide whether or not to accept what comes out of the legislature when they're done this week or next week.
Senator Snyder, I want to get to this point of Democrat versus Republican, but just bear with me a quick sec, because one of the big issues already has been around one of the CRC maps, which was originally submitted by the Center for Civic Policy. The map would shift our national congressional maps drastically, as Eric mentioned, with a goal of reportedly, and we all get this, enhancing Hispanic and Latino voices and others. That may sound good on the surface, but those decisions are all trade-offs, aren't they?
Every decision in redistricting is a trade-off. Just one quick up-to-date. I was there for the 2001 redistricting.
Right.
And you have to understand, we convened on Monday, and on Tuesday morning, 9/11 happened. So we had a totally different atmosphere in the Senate, in the legislature to go through redistricting. Didn't mean we didn't get over it and got a little bit nasty along the way. the biggest difference I think right now is that this is the first time in 30 years or so that we've had the last two redistrictings where the executive and both chambers are controlled by one party. Always before we had a governor that vetoed it, and then of course the two plans went to the courts. I think we will end up in court. I'm not sure exactly the judicial reason for us going, but I do think that's the only way that the public will accept it. I think that I can't help but think and look at this. I too supported the idea of an independent party, but I don't think it was an independent group of people. But that's my personal opinion. Could others hold that? I think that even Senator Cervantes' bill, which in the Senate's been introduced, and he and Representative Representative have introduced, goes along the lines of dividing up Albuquerque into 3 districts. I'm sorry, I don't see the areas of commonality. I can't see that Hobbs has anything in common with Santa Fe, or Albuquerque with Roswell, or any of those, or say Las Cruces with Farmington. They're just not it. And I believe in having equitable. And I think that there, in several of the plans, there were efforts made with particularly Native Americans to make sure that they're represented, and in the House and in the Senate as well. And I think that's the area where we've been most negligent over the years.
Let me swing Tom in here, Senator, just a quick sec. I want to touch on this idea you just mentioned about splitting Albuquerque up. I mean, Tom, the idea that, Roswell and Carrizozo would be included with a section of Albuquerque, or that a section of Albuquerque that would be deemed more, rural, somehow it should be mashed in with another district. Is there a downside to the urban center if this in fact happens?
Oh, most definitely, because the reason, or you would have to assume that one of the reasons why that particular map is being proposed is because they know that Albuquerque will be able to sway, the election one way or another for the Eastern District, and it's the one that we're discussing right now does not pass muster with respect to competitiveness or partisanship. And so what that means is that basically we would have 3 districts that are truly only leaning to one side, at least according to the partisan, the Princeton gerrymandering project. So, I think that it's, that's the only reason why somebody would want to split up Albuquerque 3 ways. My guess is that, Senator or Representative Stansberry would probably not be in favor of having her district cut up to benefit the 3rd congressional or the 2nd congressional.
Right.
So there's a whole lot of trading going on, but it could be really simple if we just went back to concept A that was presented by Justice Chavez and the CRC.
Eric, please do pick up on that, and I got a follow-up for you, but again, we got about a minute 20 here.
Yeah, just quickly on that. I mean, there's always this in the legislature in New Mexico, always this discussion of the rural-urban divide, and I think if this is really about unity, I mean, I will personally be affected because I'll be pushed out of this urban district into a southern district under this particular map. But I have to say, we're always in the legislature, and you've seen this, there's always this split. Everybody loves beating up on Albuquerque and the rural communities. I think all 3 members should have some rural communities, some small communities, but they also should have a piece of Albuquerque, and whether they're Republicans or Democrats. Look, Heather Wilson was my congressperson for many, many years, as was Steve Schiff. So, it shouldn't always be that Albuquerque, the greater Albuquerque area, is its own island as the biggest, city in the state. I think it's actually a very reasonable principle to say, let's make everybody have a stake in rural New Mexico and in the most urban area.
Eric, it may be reasonable, but is it practical? I mean, is it really? I mean, we're a huge state. We're a massively huge state. Is it really practical to have someone many, many miles away from the center of Albuquerque and they can connect somehow? I I can't quite see it.
Look at the current districts. You have massive districts that go from the Four Corners area to basically southern areas. So literally 200 to 300 mile district, but they happen to be two of the districts, and only one is very compact. So essentially, we've divided the fifth largest state by landmass into two massive, very spread out districts, and packed Albuquerque into one. So again, even by that principle, Gene, you would think we'd want to let's find a way, whether it's this map or another way, to have everybody have a stake in rural and urban New Mexico.
Good
right?
points there.
I mean, that's
Good points there. Hey, we'll be keeping a close eye on that special session, so stick with us on social media for updates and, of course, more analysis next week right here on New Mexico in Focus.